can I just ask you about that so that just to get an understanding? You talk about the cartel and the linkages. Just bear in mind, a lot of people will be listening to this for the first time, saying, "Well, what is the World Health Organization and the WHO and the Bank for International Settlements and what's the connection here and what's the big game? What's the game plan in your opinion?"
So these organizations are essentially connected to and or owned by two mega corporations called Blackrock and Vanguard. All of them essentially belong to and are run by and controlled by and influenced by the 1%, what I like to call the 1%, the oligarchy. In other words, the predator or parasite class that controls our economies, that tries to control our thinking, the way we think about the world, that engineers and festers crises like pandemics, or wars for that matter, so that they can benefit ultimately from their multinational corporations. This is the cartel we're referring to. The WHO in particular is significantly funded by private interests, including but not limited to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which interestingly enough, the research I was doing in an article about the United Nations, which is also deeply problematic, also funds the UN. And so we're dealing with the same set of bad actors, to put it mildly, that seek to profit through control, fear, and propaganda. But the world is waking up to it. One of my friends, dear friends, Fahri Hassan, is an expert in conflicts of interest, and his work shows you clearly how these organizations and these individuals work together. As George Carlin said, it's one big club and we're not in it.
Yeah, so how do you see it playing out then? I mean, when you're right in the heart of it, you can see what's going on in different countries. You're clearly expert on the legislation and the thinking behind it. Well, the connections behind the connections, if you follow me. But how do you, like, bearing in mind that most people are blissfully unaware of most of this stuff, because it's not being reported in the mainstream media. How do you see it playing out now that it's beginning to splinter? I mean, in other words, is the World Health Organization stuff the tip of the spear, and it's about the fracture by the look of it? Am I misreading that?
I think it is the tip of the spear, certainly the way I would characterize it. But if we look at what happened at the UN General Assembly in September this year, 11 countries formally objected in writing to a political declaration on pandemics that the UN tried to push through. Non-binding, but it certainly is an alarm bell. And what it says to me is that countries are beginning to question their role and their continued membership within the WHO, within the United Nations, and with the entire Hydra structure. It certainly does not benefit most of us. It may benefit some countries that have a position of being on the Security Council of the United Nations. But as for the rest, as these 11 countries said, there's always a lack of balance, a lack of inclusion, a lack of transparency, and they feel completely ignored and disrespected. Even that letter to the UN was ignored. The General Assembly President 478, UNGA 78, proceeded to declare that the political declaration had been passed, completely ignoring that these countries had broke the silence, which is a very significant step for them to have taken. So I think geopolitically, also with the formation and expansion of BRICS, we're going to see countries working more closely with each other and start to extricate themselves from the Hydra.